I'm Jim W6LG, your ham radio Elmer here on YouTube. Welcome to my radio room in Rocklin, California. Um, Today we're going to install a coax connector and going to do the crimp type because it's far and away, for me anyway, the easiest way to do it. I'm going to put the connector on some RG8, which is the same diameter as RG213. The connector comes in a little bag like this. It's got a crimp ring. And tools that we're going to use, I've got some cutter that's good for cutting coax. Going to use an old Weller soldering gun like this one. I just repaired it, as you can tell. There is a name for that disease. Going to use a decent set of crimping tools. These are laminated and quite strong. Barely strong enough to close the tool. The other thing that I'm going to use, which in a little bit of solder, is this guy. And this is scissors with a curved cutting blade. And I hadn't seen them before. I was required to cut some pills in half. I take more than 20 medications every day. And for a while, I had to cut the Eliquis pills in half. So these are pill cutting scissors. I looked at them and I thought, well, heck, I'm going to get some extra ones because they're going to be good for stripping wire. And they are. They're now. That's not the perfect tool for prepping coax to put on the coax connector, but it shows that you can do it with just about anything. Could be some kind of utility knife with a sharp blade. The problem I'm having with these is that I've used them so much, they're getting to be a bit dull. Oh, by the way, price on these, less than $7 on Amazon, and I think they came the next day. So let's take a look at how I install the coax connector on an RG8U. It's going to take a few minutes because the prepping is the hardest part, but it really isn't all that hard. And the dimensions, I'm just kind of guessing at where I want to do the cut, and it works out fine. And in fact, that's the way I've done it for years. So let's take a look at that video, and at the end of it, I'm going to use my vacuum. Before I forget, this was 20 bucks, maybe 30. And it's the handiest darn thing for two reasons. One, it's a pretty decent vacuum. It's got a fair amount of suction. So for cleaning up the mess that I make, it's really good. So you can take this end of it off, and you can put different tools on the end of this. So the blower's in here, and it has pretty good output. So if you want to clean off a transceiver, instead of trying to dust it off, you can just blow off the dust with one of those. Anyway, we'll talk about that in another video. Let's do the installation of a coax connector on some RG8AU with a foam dielectric. Okay, so this is RG8AU with a foam dielectric and a pretty decent shield. So I've got to cut through the jacket, the shield, and the dielectric with my pill cutting scissors, and I'm just going to feel my way through it. It's enough to have just a fraction of an inch sticking out past the end of the coax connector. So I'm rotating the coax. It's easier if you're not doing it with a camera. And I'm cutting through the jacket, which is a polyethylene, the shield, which is copper, and the dielectric, which is also some kind of foam dielectric. And at some point I can tell when I've cut through all of it. It's not a big deal, just feeling if I'm cutting down far enough. and then to pull off the jacket along with the shield, and then the dielectric. On foam coax like this, it's easier to pull off the dielectric. On a solid polyethylene, the dielectric may need to be cut in two spots to get it out of the way. So um, again, I'm sort of feeling my way through cutting down to the center conductor and not wounding the center conductor. And there goes the jacket of the coax. Shield looks decent. There's a few strands still holding on, so I'm going to cut through those as best I can. Now I've pulled the dielectric off. Got a good length of center conductor protruding. Time now to cut the jacket out of the way, and I'm just going to guess at about a half an inch. Rotate the coax, not wanting to cut the shield, just cut through the jacket of the coax, and then pull the jacket off using my scissors. I'm just going to tug on it until it comes off. Okay, looks like the shield is cut clean. Time now for the coax connector, which is nickel and Teflon. Slide it on there we go. The other part of the coax connector is in place, as is the crimp ring. Okay. Trim off a little bit of the shield that's long. I don't want it sticking out past the crimp ring. Not that it does any harm, it just doesn't look good. So I'm trimming off a few strands, probably about 5. All right, it's pretty much ready to go. The shield is in place and it looks pretty good. So bring the crimp ring up and push it over the shield. And now it's time for the crimp tool. All right, put the crimp tool in place, right up against the end. And here's where my lack of strength comes into play. So um, it's sometimes difficult for me to compress that ring. All right, then I'm going to line up the tool and do a second crimp. All right, so here comes the second crimp. I've aligned the tool and crimped it so it looks pretty even down the length of the crimp ring. Crimp ring is longer or wider than the die itself. Now I need to solder the center conductor. And to do that, I'm going to heat it up with an old Weller gun you can see in the corner. And then I'm going to heat the center conductor and the pin of the coax connector at the same time. So it, in that way, will not be a cold solder joint. To help me do that, I'm using a table vise to grab the coax. Okay, so I'm heating the center conductor and the pin at the same time. Going to trim off the excess. So it looks pretty good. Okay, well, I made a pretty good mess because I did more than one coax connector, and that's why the lengths sometimes look different. But I've got them in place, soldered the tips, didn't screw them up. They check out 100%, and they saved me a bunch of money. The connectors, I think uh, ones that you saw in the video were nickel plated with a Teflon insulation. My cost in buying those was a couple of dollars a connector, and they're great. So for jumpers that are this one that I made is about 2 feet long. They work great. So I'm Jim, W6LG in Rockland, California, saying thanks for watching. Please do subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, put it below. What do you use besides pill cutting scissors? There are some really nifty tools, but this was $7, and some of those tools are $30, $40. So I went with the cheap way out. 73. See you the next time.